Okay, so here we go. As you can see here, we have the three lights on the side. This is light 1, light 2, light 3, and we have our sphere here in the middle. Now if you take a look, like I was telling you with the little ninja, the angle of this light goes like this. This is the way it shows. You can see the way that that's shot. The light's going to travel, it's going to hit right here. This is really going to give you that core shadow. Wherever that light touches right here on this key point, these two key points, that is where the core of the shadow is going to start. So this is where the heaviest line is going to be for your shadows. And that's assuming that you have a reflected light that's going to come in the back here, which is usually the case in most drawings, most any lighting condition. You're going to have that reflected light shining into the back, shining back here, creating that extra light area. But right here, this is where your highlights are. So if you start those ways, you have this band, you have this main band here, then everything after this is a gradiated tone. And then once you have the reflected light, it's going to lighten this area up as well. So if you can see this, you don't even need to really use a blending stump or anything. You really want to get these core concepts down before you even start blending anything together. Because if you don't know where these shadows are beginning, then you really have no business blending anything together, because you don't really know where those shadows are starting. So let's go with this. This is going to be the key. And when you're doing this, again, you want to follow the contours of the ball or the sphere. You can even do it really rough. Just whatever that shape, you want to do it as if you're following the contour of the 3D ball on the page. So now if you see this, if you saw this in a planetscape, like if it was the moon, if you saw this as the moon and there was no reflected light in the dead of space, this would be the end line, and then that would be all that you see right here of the moon. But since we have our horizon line right here, this is where the ball is sitting, it's going to have that reflected light coming off the back end, which is going to light this section up and make it actually have its own darker tone, or lighter tone rather. So you have this darker band, and then the shadow is going to reach into that, and as long as you're going with the roundness of the ball, you'll have a really solid shadow start to develop on your end. This one's a little more rough than how I would normally go about it, but for demonstration purposes, I think you get the point. I think you get the idea here that you have an initial shadow, which is all, you have initial highlight on your image, which is always going to be the starting point, and then the core shadow is going to be wherever that light touches that image or that object, and then that's going to start that core shadow. And if you have no reflected light, that core shadow will be in all black, and then there you go, you can start. That's your shadow and that's your light. But in most cases, you're going to have that reflected light, which is going to come off the back end, and lighten this whole back area up. And you can even pull out a kneaded eraser if you want. But that is basically how you figure out that's definitely how you figure out where to start your shadows, wherever the light, and that's why the angle and intensity of the light is so important. Because without these lines, you're not going to be able to figure out where the cast shadow goes. You're not going to be able to figure out where to even start the core of the shadow. Not accurately enough with the way that nature works. That's definitely not going to work the way that nature works. Like I showed you with the little ninja, as before, at the angle of the light, it was a direct angle from the top of the object to the ground, and it went exactly with the angle that the light was being pointed directly at it. So that is how you figure out the highlights, the core, or the hump is what they call it, and the reflected light. And then the cast shadows are going to be the point where the light line, as you can see, I'm drawing this a lot darker for dramatic so you can see it. That is going to be the section of where this line meets with the horizon line. So that's it's always going to be darkest right next to the object, and then it's going to spread out. But that cast shadow will go and intersect at this point where the horizon meets the line. So as you can see, it's getting there. It's a little rough, and it's just a quick demonstration, but you can even use the side of your pencil, get a little cleaner if you want. But that is a really, you can see how the depth, it gives it that extra depth once you draw in that cast shadow. So determining the angle of the light, the way that the perspective that the actual image is being drawn on, if we raise the horizon line up to here, obviously that would change the way you draw the cast shadow, but that's another drawing. For this one specifically, this is the simplest way to get it. And you can even do a ruler if you like. You can trace this line all the way back. So that's the point. Cast shadow starts. That's the point. That's your core shadow. Then you get your darkest by the inside, right closest to the sphere is going to be the darkest section. And then you have your reflected light coming off of this surface here, because all of this light's bouncing back here. So it's basically doing a little like that. So I hope that gave you a pretty solid understanding of the way that the light and intensity will really bring that depth to your images, and I hope that gave you a good understanding, and I hope it drove home the point that lighting and determining the lighting in your images is going to be key to how you draw anything, whether it's a portrait, a building, a car, a plane, anything that you're drawing in a 3D space. You're going to want to choose and determine the lighting beforehand. Otherwise, it's just not going to have that depth. It's going to turn into a big blob. If I didn't take into account the light source here, and I just did all of this in shadow in the same tone. You can always go and refine it, obviously. It's looking okay, but if I get rid of this highlight, it changes the direction of the lighting. Not only does it change the direction of the lighting, it makes it a totally different image. So you need to really get a good understanding of the way and direction that you want your light to be hitting your object. Otherwise, you're going to be looking around for answers and you're really not going to know what they are because you haven't really mastered lighting. So I hope that gave you some good solid foundation, some examples of what you really need to do, how to get it. And you know what, just go download, I have a download. You can go into the resources, you can practice with choosing the light and really just focusing on what angle you want it to be coming from and shade the sphere in that direction. The more you do that, you can do it on a regular book. You can go get that download. The download, it has 6 different spheres. You can just determine the light and get drawing. You don't have to even find a book. And you know, you just practice. The more you practice, the more you observe light, just like our little ninja guy, the more you just look at the different things, the better you're going to grasp the concept and the better you're going to get at drawing light. So this is Kevin. I hope you enjoyed this one. Always be learning and go out there and keep it simple.